Hey everybody, Riot Mort here, and it's Monday, another week, another Monday morning meta report. We're on patch 16.5, which just came out Thursday, and let's talk about it like we always do. As usual, there's the disclaimers. The reports are based off early experiences, internal data. Anything included in this report does not mean we'll be actioning on it, and data only tells us what is, not what can be. You've seen these before. They are what they are. All right. On the champs and trait side, this patch was a pretty big patch, and honestly, it didn't change that much. The meta is still kind of 4-cost centered. There are some new options out there, but generally you're still seeing a lot of Bel'Veth Slayers, Shadow Isle Callista, Kaisa variants, Ionia, Bilgewater, all doing very well. Like I said, there are new options, the number one of which, the Apex Predator is back, T-Hex. T-Hex was overbuffed. T-Hex 1 just doing way too much damage too quickly. The channeled spell continues to be pretty difficult to balance right, and clearly has the highest peak. T-Hexes will still fall off at some point, but T-Hex 2s are pretty tough to beat, though we are seeing some innovation around here. It's starting to fall off a little bit from where it was day one, but it is still too high. There's also Aphelios and Yasuo reroll are doing well. Those have kind of moved up. The Aphelios buffs seem to be pretty powerful there. There's also a few narrow options that are pretty strong, probably too strong. Double Trouble Malzahar. Malzahar himself actually seems pretty close to balanced, but Double Trouble version ends up just being a little too strong. Reroll Ishtal is actually starting to peak out at way too high a cap. It's pretty tough to beat. Seems like the best version of Ishtal. Ishtal always has that problem that high risk traits always do, which is when they're good, they're really good. And then the other big news here is I'll just say that, the reroll buffs, there were a ton of buffs to 3-cost. It didn't really work. 3-cost rerolls still not really the best. I will say the Noxus version with Darius, LeBlanc, and Draven has become the strongest, but even that's still just okay, Things like Vayne, Ahri, Jinx, Millia are just really not really worth pursuing unless you magically luck into them, and even then they're just kind of okay. So, and then there were some nerfs and bug fixes that did more harm than good. The Zaun bug fix happened right before the patch went live. There were no compensation buffs, and so that hurt lines like the Warwick line, Jinx line, stuff like that. And then the Demacia nerf, which was pretty small, but kind of just goes to show you how much that one was kind of falling out of favor last patch, and then the extra 5 armor and MR can make a big difference. And so it's always interesting how some lines you can give them like a 20% buff, doesn't move the needle. Other lines minus 5 armor and MR, and now it's tough. That being said, I think some of the early reports of how bad Demacia got hurt by this nerf were a little exaggerated, but it is definitely worse than it was before, to the point where it can't really compete with things like Shadow Isles and stuff like that. So overall, I would say not the biggest patch as far as opening up new options. It just kind of left it the same and traded a few like Warwick and Demacia for T-Hex and Aphelios. So that's kind of where it's at right now. One thing I want to talk about is something that's been on my mind personally, is the early game versus the late game, and how right now there's really too sharp of a jump between that early and mid game, the things that you see before 4-1, and the late game combat pacing, which leads to kind of less than ideal game pacing overall. Pretty big part of this is these 4-cost DR tanks that create this DPS check that basically a lot of our AP champions really struggle with. Again, I've talked about it many times, but the Rift Heralds and the Brahms of the world, if you have a champ that just can't get through them, you're going to lose. And especially when you start to have 2 or 3 carries that can burn through things like a Nautilus 3 or other tanks, it just really becomes tough. And then the other thing is that the unlocked champs that guarantee a copy early, and this is like Kaisa, Rift Herald, stuff like that. But often these 1-star 4 costs are more successful than the 2-star 3 costs. A lot of people would much rather have a Rift Herald 1 than a Mundo 2 right now, and I think that is a problem when you can get the copy guaranteed, right? It's a little different when you high roll a Wukong 1. That can feel kind of good. But when you can guarantee it, it becomes a little too predictable, and that's leading to some pretty big stagnation in the mid to late game. There's like I said, there's a lot of work to do around the game pacing. And when and if we ever revisit unlocks, we have to ensure that the game just doesn't turn into a race for these. This is also something we're keeping an eye on next patch. A lot of people who've been doing the PvE scrims have noticed that, like, when you can unlock something like Rift Herald on like 3-2, it turns up into these races for these champions. And if you can just get a Rift Herald 1 on 3-2, well, what purpose does Mundo serve? And that's going to be something that we're going to have to work towards. That means there might be a possible 1-star unlocks. We're going to, even for next patch, going to need to make sure they're much weaker in their framework to account for that forceability. And so this is just something that, again, has been on my mind pretty deeply for this patch and next patch especially. So something I'd share. All right, our usual stuff. Portable Forge. I don't know. I feel like this slide has not been super valuable. It's currently before 4.4. Artifacts aren't warping the meta. Pretty cool. Nothing's changed. It's still good on 2.1, worse on 4.2. The only thing I did want to note is that it is better at lower elo. We're seeing at high elo, it sits at like 4.53 overall. And at lower elo, it's at 4.46. So again, not a huge difference by any means. It is still the most picked augment, but overall, just wanted to say that as you get higher up, some of them are less effective. But again, otherwise, artifacts aren't warping the meta, which is something we promised. So cool. All right. On the augment side, augments, there was a big augment pass. Now, as much as the champ and trait balance didn't necessarily land where we wanted it, I will say the augment balance actually turned out a lot better. And you'll see that on the next slide too. But here's our overperforming augments. And Golden Egg, number 1, right where it should be. Bandle Bounty Plus, cool. Golemify turns out to be a big overbuff. That being said, it's not like way out of bounds or anything, but shows you that, a 3-star 3 or 2-star 3 cost, pretty powerful here, just to give you some anchoring. But it is nice to know that now we know it's kind of like the ceiling and floor here of Golemify. We can probably pull back on some of its HP, or if we have to make that a 2-star 2 cost, we can. But nice to see Golemify do well. The other interesting one here is Component Heist. Component Heist was, again, an augment I think a lot of people talked bad on. It wasn't really that good. We gave it 1 component, and now it's here. So, that's cool. Again, just kind of show you the margins here. But Evolve and Overcome's been good for a while. Malicious Monetization, Solo Leveling, Spoils of War, Expectedness, Pilfer. All of these have been good for a while, so nothing's crazy there. But overall, this is looking pretty healthy as far as augments go. And on the lower elo side, this is, again, what we've come to expect with the verticals. Jarvan and Shyvana, despite being nerfed, is still number 2, which just goes to show you, again, high elo Demacia, not really that good, but it's still really good in low elo. Rumble Carry does really well here. Zahin's Augment, Silco's Revenge, despite Zon nerfs, Noxian Invasion, Mbessa Kindred Duo, Malicious Monetization, Ruin King, Golden Egg, Big Friend, Expected Unexpectedness, Bringer of Ruin, and Going Long. So, yeah. And then this is the one I'm actually really happy with the team for. Underperforming augments. There's only 4. That's great. That's awesome. And 2 of them, Ishtal Expeditionist and Pandora's Bench, shouldn't be buffed. So, this is great. This is really good. There's not that many bad augments. Now, again, depends on your line of bad here. I'm sure some could take the ones that are in that 4.8 to 4.6 range and call them bad, and they wouldn't necessarily be wrong, but man, our margins have shrunk, and that's good. The biggest miss here, obviously, World Runes, still bad, despite going up to 6 XP. Seeing it here is, again, pretty disappointing. It's a little sad. Wild Growth has just been bad for high elo forever. Reroll Yordle, not very good, which again goes back to the very first slide about how reroll is struggling, and Teemo 3 is not very good, Tristana 3 not very good. For the bottom players, Ishtal Expeditionist, Recombobulator, and Winout are the ones that, again, probably don't need buffs. Cooking Pot, World Runes, Trait Tree, Alawi Hero Augment, and Restart Mission. Restart Mission's always funny to me, being low in low elo. Meanwhile, I've got challengers saying it's one of the most overpowered augments we've ever made. But overall, at least on the underperforming side, we're looking good. And so, like I said, props to the team for the augment balance. It got a lot better this patch, and hopefully we can keep going even further. If we get to a world where it's literally just Ishtal Expeditionist and Pandora's Bench here, that'd be sweet. So cool to see. And then finally, known bugs. I'm not going to read these all because they're all the same ones. I'm sure there's new ones. Like I said, we just haven't had much chance to fix some of these ones. So is what it is. But there you go. That is your Monday morning meta report. Now, obviously, the big news here is that next patch is the one where we're changing a lot of the unlock conditions. I'm sure, like I said, it's Monday now, which means we'll be finalizing those changes. I'll be posting about them and things like that. We might, adjust some of them. I know T-Hex on PBE has still been pretty insane, stuff like that. So anyway, there you go. There is your Monday morning meta report. As always, I'll be back next week to keep you up to date. So cool. All right, that's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.